I am Lord Sheogorath's man of business. I carry out his will in all things, in order to keep the affairs of the realm in order. The realm of madness is rarely in order, of course. Rather, it is as Sheogorath wills it. My enjoyment is entirely beside the point. I exist to serve the realm. Nothing more, nothing less. As to how I came into Lord Sheogorath's service, all I will say is that he and I go back to the beginning. You might say that I am the one constant in the ever-changing whims of the mad god. I really can't think of a job more torturous and demoralizing than being expected to manage the affairs of the mad god. A chamberlain must work tirelessly to organize the household of their master, and the task requires a person with an appreciation for orderliness, someone who takes satisfaction in seeing things neatly arranged. But when the household you're managing lies in the very centre of mania and dementia, at the heart of a realm commonly called the madhouse or the asylums, governed by the deific embodiment of insanity, the role of Chamberlain sounds like eternal torment. Yet despite this, Chamberlain Haskill stands with perfect posture beside his master's throne, unyielding to the gargantuan task before him. He is decorum and professionalism manifest. It's hard not to wonder what such a master of his craft is doing in Sheogorath's Shivering Isles, but after a little pondering, it makes complete sense. It takes more than fastidiousness to manage the affairs of the mad god. It takes a degree of perfectionism that would certainly transmogrify into the obsessive-compulsive. Haskill would never tell a soul if his compulsions caused him psychological distress, for even in a realm of Oblivion where time is inconsequential, the Chamberlain never has enough of it to carry out all of his duties. Haskill is an orderly man, trying to organise a land without reason. No wonder he's been heard saying, "If we are nothing but characters in an elaborate game played by unknown entities, well, why aren't I having any fun?" Hey guys, it's Drew the Daedrologist here and welcome back to Fudge Muppet. I've talked about Sheogorath in great detail before on the channel, and I've explored every corner of the wondrous Shivering Isles, but somehow I've overlooked one of the realm's most fascinating characters. I guess you can chalk that up to his efficacy in remaining totally inconspicuous while his master takes centre stage. I'm sure Sheogorath's Chamberlain would roll his eyes and give a sigh if he knew I were writing this video. After all, he's been quoted as saying this to a mortal who asked too many questions. How typical, you mortals love to take a pebble of information and construct entire realms of conjecture upon it. I can't help but feel personally attacked by this painfully accurate description of my videos. But here we are, Haskill. If you don't like it, have your master whisk me away to the asylums. And with that, assuming I finish this video without going insane, let's get right into it. Who is Chamberlain Haskill? Excepting a brief encounter with the Vestige in Second Era 582, the first notable contact with Sheogorath's Chamberlain came the moment the champion of Cyrodiil arrived in the Shivering Isles through the strange door. In the gaping maw of the mad god, the portal to Oblivion was alive with magic, and no mortal brave enough to pass through it would have expected the quite mundane situation waiting on the other side. Our first impression of the dreaded asylums was not the chaotic manifestation of Sheogorath's mind, but rather an orderly meeting room. By the candlelight a metronome ticked away rhythmically, as metronomes are specially designed to do, and an elegantly dressed Haskill sat with exemplary posture, giving the visitor ample time to acclimatise. And then, with a courteous request to be seated, we're introduced to the individual employed to arrange the mad god's affairs. With a meticulous mixture of civility and sardonicism, Haskill managed to make the hero of Kvatch feel simultaneously welcomed and condescended to. Such is the charm of the inscrutable Chamberlain. Not much can be probed from Haskill during this encounter, except maybe for the fact that even Sheogorath's own Chamberlain cannot hope to understand the mind of his master. Haskill had this to say about the mad god. As for his intent, to attempt to fathom it is a foolish endeavour. His will is his own, his reality follows suit. And when the conversation drew to a close, the Chamberlain left inconspicuously, moments before the entire room dissolved into butterflies. This contrast sums up Haskill's relationship with Sheogorath and the Shivering Isles pretty well. Haskill maintains a dignified presence while the world around him devolves further and further into whimsy, like a courtly gentleman trapped in Lewis Carroll's fever dream. And speaking of Lewis Carroll, I think a line of his captures Sheogorath's thought process when conjuring up the Shivering Isles. If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense. Nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrary-wise, what is, it wouldn't be. And what it wouldn't be, it would, you see? For much of the champion's stay in the madhouse, Haskill minded his own business. His seemingly infinite supply of patience was put to the test when Sheogorath shared the secret spell of summoning Haskill at will. But other than that, he left the champion to his duties. It's actually when we learn about another character altogether that we can unravel more of the mysteries regarding the Chamberlain. After Sheogorath transformed into Jiggalag, Haskill sent the champion in search of the great library of Jiggalag, where another Chamberlain dwelt. Before the other Daedra lords cursed the Prince of Order Jiggalag with insanity, Dias of Mytheria was his Chamberlain. And unlike Haskill, Dias's purpose made total sense. Jiggalag was logical, and kept his knowledge neatly organised in the Great Library. Dias served as Jiggalag's librarian, and soon found himself carrying out all manner of tedious tasks for the prince. Dias had been immortal once, but in the eyes of a Daedra lord, the woes of mortality are little more than a nuisance. So the Prince of Order stripped Dias of his mortality, and with eternal life in Jiggalag's great library, Dias grew to be very knowledgeable. Only the prophecies stored within the enigmatic Elder Scrolls were off limits to him. But when Jiggalag became Sheogorath, he no longer saw the value in his great library, and had it burned to the ground. Perhaps the sight of all those heavy tomes, stacked alphabetically in immaculate rows, sent him spiralling into a depressive episode. But even in the throes of apathy, Sheogorath could not bring himself to harm Dias, and all the manifold knowledge he possessed. So Dias was sealed away within the ruins of the library, and served as the sole piece of order that endured in the chaos of the Shivering Isles. But as with Haskill, little is revealed about Dias from conversations shared with the champion of Cyrodiil. Dias mused over his homeland of Mytheria, which he could not remember despite his vast wisdom, and sounds conspicuously fictitious when said aloud. Even his true name is forgotten, as Dias was the name given to him by Jiggalag. When the Prince of Order was freed from his Grey March curse, both Haskill and Dias remained alive and immortal, the former in service to the new mantled Sheogorath, and the other awaiting Jiggalag's return. So if we're going to find out all there is to know about Sheogorath's Chamberlain, we must look elsewhere. Fortunately, despite his insistence that he's far too busy to chat with tenacious mortals, Haskill has opened up in 2 separate interviews, one of which included some input from Dias. The first of these interviews has been transcribed in the ESO Loremaster's archive. When asked who or what he is, Chamberlain Haskill responds, "I am a vestige, all that remains of a mortal from your world who mantled Sheogorath during an event in a previous time. As a fragment, my memory of the event is fragmentary. I am hazy on the entire concept of mantling, but it had something to do with Lord Sheogorath, myself, and this Jiggalag of whom you speak. A vestige is the Daedric equivalent to what a mortal would consider their soul. Daedra do not possess an anuic animus, and thus do not return to Aetherius when they die. When a Daedra is killed, their vestige is banished to the void, before reforming from a substance called chaotic creatia. Once this is done, the Daedra is reborn in the relevant plane of Oblivion. So if Haskill was once a mortal with a soul, how did he end up a vestige? Well, a Daedra Lord can create a Daedra from any living thing in the mortal realm of Mundus. It's more akin to a corruption than a creation, as even the most powerful Daedric princes cannot truly create, only change. Molag Bal did this when he made the first Daedric Titan from the skeleton of the mighty dragon Bozikodstran. It would make sense if, at some point in time, Sheogorath had chosen Haskill to be his Chamberlain, and replaced his soul with a vestige as Molag Bal had done. But Haskill also claims to have mantled the mad god. Mantling is what the champion of Cyrodiil did to Sheogorath during the Grey March of 4th Era 433. Mantling has been described as walking like them until they walk like you. And it is achieved by becoming an already existing god, whether by taking their place or merging with them. I think I did an alright job of explaining it in my guide to immortality, so I'm going to be lazy and quote that for a second. A lot can be discovered about mantling from the name alone. To mantle is to envelop or shroud something, like wrapping an object in a cloak. Like this description, achieving divinity via mantling requires a subject and an object, a mortal to mantle, and an immortal to be mantled. If this is what Haskill did, then he must have found a way to separate himself from the mad god after mantling him, while maintaining his immortality. Haskill claims that Sheogorath, Jiggalag, and himself were all present for this mantling, and as a result, he is only a fragment of the mortal he once was. The champion of Cyrodiil mantled Sheogorath, and now embodies all of the mad god's madness. But Jiggalag was freed at that point, and was not mantled. Perhaps Jiggalag's involvement in Haskill's mantling process explains why he is so orderly in a realm that has no place for orderliness. Whatever the case, I hope I didn't lose you with that convoluted description of the Chamberlain's origins. The remainder of the information we have about Haskill comes from an unofficial source, and so we should take it with a grain of salt. But in its defense, it was written by two of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion's game designers, so I personally consider it canon. This source is called An Interview with Two Denizens of the Shivering Isles, and took place shortly after the Champion of Cyrodiil ended the Grey March. When asked how they became Chamberlains to Daedra Lords, Daius responded by saying, "My employment, as you describe it, was at the whim of Lord Jiggalag. I served him because he willed it to be so. As for my former life, I no longer remember it. That may be because I had none, or it may be because Lord Jiggalag blessed me with forgetfulness. I am not even certain if Mytheria is a true place or not." Haskill's answer was even more cryptic. "I exist to serve the realm, nothing more, nothing less. As to how I came into Lord Sheogorath's service, all I will say is that he and I go back to the beginning. You might say that I am the one constant in the ever-changing whims of the mad god." And so, somehow, despite his eloquent responses to multiple questions on the topic, Chamberlain Haskill and his equal opposite Daius appear to be the most perplexing of the Shivering Isles inhabitants. Compared to Haskill, the mad god Sheogorath seems like an open book. If the Chamberlain speaks true, and he is but a fragment of his former mortal self, then perhaps his full story is a mystery, even to himself. But there you have it, guys, the curious case of Sheogorath's Chamberlain, Haskill. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I don't know about you, but I hope we'll see more of this character in the Elder Scrolls 6, not just his eccentric master. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Drew, this has been Fudge Muppet, and I'll see you in the next one.